I've done quite a few videos focusing on the potential Switch 2 recently, but one way or another, we are approaching crunch time. The next 2 weeks is surely the biggest couple of weeks for the company left in 2024. Whether the new playtest is for a Nintendo-themed toilet and Everybody Want to Switch DLC, or the new console and 18 first-party titles alongside, we are fast approaching the final investors meeting of the year on 5th of November 2024. The original Switch was revealed exactly 7 days before the investor call in 2016. The equivalent date this year would be 29th of October 2024. Of course, previous console announcements have often coincided with investor calls in the same way, most notably with Shuntaro Furukawa's pre-announcement of an announcement in May 2024. I think at this point we can be 90% sure that we will see the new console before the February investors briefing, which hasn't been announced yet but seems likely to be on or around the 4th of February. So my feeling is that there is little benefit to revealing the console after the investors meeting, which means that if the console is announced this year, there's a 90% chance it will be announced by the 5th or 6th of November. Of course, this prompts the question, will it be unveiled this year? The case for is amply outlined on almost any Nintendo channel you'll be following, a daisy chain of promising rumours promising an imminent reveal. I will at some point do a video about analysing rumours, but suffice to say for now that there are always strong rumours. Sometimes they're absolutely spot on, sometimes they're Switch Pro. Rumours by themselves are always interesting but insufficient. Still, I do buy the production is ramping up. There is certainly good reason to think they will be moving forward with advertising and other operations related to the new system, and obviously with all eyes on the playtest next week, it would make a particularly opportune moment to reveal their next big thing. It's also notable that they haven't sought to quell speculation. Unlike recent directs, where they've specifically framed expectations with the indication that the new console would not be mentioned, they've kept things rather mysterious here. However, let's review the case against. Firstly, they gave themselves a time frame extending to the next financial year, and while that might have been a buffer they wanted to offer themselves, we might also take it as a statement of intent. Secondly, if a reveal next year was ever an option, surely there are reasons enough to defer, from a major humanitarian crisis in Vietnam, one of their main manufacturing partners, which is delaying exports, to elections in both Japan and America, which make control of the news cycles uncertain. It's often said that they won't want to disrupt the Switch's last holiday season, and while I think the upsides from hyping up the next console would probably balance out the impact on the current hardware, especially now that their biggest seller or biggest likely seller, Super Mario Party Jamboree, has already been announced and released. If they don't need to take the risk at this point, why would they? In the same vein, if they don't need to reveal the release date, they may not. The original Switch trailer didn't give a precise release date after all, although it did give the release month. It's possible for Nintendo to vague this up. They could say spring 2025, for example, which gives them a theoretical leeway of March to June, but I'm not sure it will be all that beneficial to them, since if they end up announcing it for later in that window, everything will be so dominated by Switch 2 speculation that they could probably drop Mother 3, and people would still be asking, what does this mean for Switch 2? Now, I've deep dived release dates, both for games and consoles, in a lot more detail before, and I really suggest people check out those videos for a lot more specifics. However, I do think things are in flux. Let's assume for the purposes of this discussion that a holiday 2025 or beyond release is off the table. I think a late release like this is now less likely given the buzz around production, but still not impossible. Still, at this point, I think it feels 90% likely that we will get the machine by the end of September 2025. Here's what it comes down to then. We don't know what arrangements the company has in place with suppliers, with partners, to ensure production goes smoothly. At a certain point, when they are far enough advanced, their flexibility for scheduling reduces to zero. and if they are far enough along that a March drop is in any way possible, then they pretty much need to announce now. But at this point, as I've previously forecast, I don't think we'll see a console release this fiscal year. Previously, I thought April was a good shout. Easter is celebrated with bank holidays across much of the West and is late this coming year with Easter Sunday on the 20th of April. Remember that the N64 was originally scheduled for the 21st of April 1996, a bit after Easter, but before Golden Week. It was pushed back because they realised they would not have sufficient supply to avoid the kinds of shortages that have plagued the Sega Saturn and others. Well, Nintendo must be even more paranoid about supply shortages now. In one sense, if people are keen to get a console and can't, it doesn't matter that much, but if they're going to be spending a lot on advertising, it won't please investors if that money turns out to be spent in vain because retailers can't actually keep the machine in stock. So Golden Week is huge across Japan and goes from the 29th of April to the 5th of May. A release date immediately before these holidays would make a lot of sense, but we know supply chains in Vietnam have been hit hard over the last month, and while Nintendo also has production capacity in China and Malaysia, and very possibly they will want their most trusted manufacturers on the newest hardware, they are really going to need maximum output if they have any hope of avoiding initial delays. If they originally hoped for mid-April, I think they would now find mid-May or June a more promising option. If the console isn't on sale during Golden Week, there's no particular reason to rush into the market right after. Of course, there is some precedent in them doing a big post-Golden Week release in the form of 2023's Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. This would represent a 3-week delay from the middle to late April window that I think would previously be most likely. Is 3 weeks, though, significant enough a change from April 21st to affect their supply? I mean, supply is a tricky one. Too little and they run into problems, but they don't want to be in a situation of having to look around for extra warehouse space at short notice for one of the most sought-after pieces of equipment to be manufactured that year. I feel like there's a 70% chance we will get a drop between April and July, and at this point April feels like it may have been the plan A, but I'm not convinced it will be the final landing place. However, Nintendo do not have an awful lot of flexibility, so if they have any doubts, they need to make sure that they make a decision earlier. And if they're being cautious, it makes sense to push the release date a little bit further back while they still have the flexibility to alter dates. And if they're not dropping until May or June, I think a January or first few days in February reveal for the system becomes a lot more plausible. On the other hand, if there is no delay and they're still confident in mid-April, a date with real history for both the Game Boy and the original date of the N64, then they probably can't wait that long. Yes, it would be an earlier reveal date than they required according to Shuntaro Furukawa's previous statement, but then again everyone thought Switch would release at the end of March, and it ended up coming out right at the beginning. Sometimes waiting just doesn't buy you any more options. In the interest of it being an interesting forecast more than anything, I'm going to say I think there's a 30% chance we will see a new console reveal this week. As ever, my aim isn't so much to be right or wrong with any forecast, but that over the long term, the percentage ranges prove to broadly match the likelihood of anything Nintendo does at any one time. But I will say if they do release the Nintendo Toilet, I'm just saying 10th of November is the unofficial toilet day in Japan, so please check out these prior videos for a deep dive on release dates, the playlist here for a lot more on Switch 2, and don't forget to check out various exclusives on my Patreon linked below. Thanks for watching and engaging, and I'll see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast video.